Spoiler warning, this video will contain massive spoilers for the game, and even though I think it's deeply flawed, I still think it's worth playing just to experience it on your own. I mean, just because I have problems with it doesn't mean you won't enjoy it, and I wouldn't want to poison your experience with my overly negative take. But I'm not your dad, probably, so do what you want. Just in case you aren't familiar, 12 Minutes, also known as the Hiding in the Closet Simulator, is a murder mystery puzzle game and interactive thriller where you play as... Why don't I know the main character's name? He doesn't have a name? Okay. Where you play as James McAvoy, stuck in a time loop living the same 12 minutes over and over again, trying to uncover the mystery behind what's going on so you can escape the time loop and save you and your wife's life. Sounds pretty sweet, right? Well, 12 Minutes is an interesting and unique experience, but it didn't really work for me. I'm not saying it's bad, because I don't think it's a bad game. It just didn't live up to my expectations, and after I finished with it, I left feeling overwhelmingly disappointed. But days later, I'm still thinking about it, so the game has at least left a strong impact on me. And even though I ultimately think that the game was too flawed overall, it's the kind of game where I totally understand how someone could overlook all the problems with it and fall in love with the core experience underneath. That being said, I'd like to discuss the problems I have with 12 Minutes, because I think there are three major things holding it back. Number 1, the dialogue is broken. Number 2, the gameplay is wrong. And number 3, the story has no purpose. So, first things first, the dialogue. Now let's get this out of the way. The voice acting is phenomenal. It's really, really good. And when the game lines up the dialogue correctly, the result is extremely engaging from an emotional perspective. The problem is that the game very rarely lines up the dialogue correctly, and, as a result, is incapable of holding on to any sort of emotional through line. The game is constantly breaking you out of the immersion that it's working so hard to build. Let me give you a concrete example, because there's one moment that perfectly illustrates what I'm trying to say here. For the context of this scene, you know, because of the time loop, that a cop is going to come in and brutalize your wife, looking for her father's pocket watch. And if he finds you there, he will kill you. But you've managed to sneak into the closet to hide without your pregnant wife finding out that you're home. This means as long as you don't do anything, the cop won't find you. Let's see what happens.
What? Me?
Yes, you. Hands behind your back. Let's go. Hold still.
Hey, you're hurting. I don't know what you... This is a mistake.
Uh-huh.
I don't... You must be... Look... I don't know. You don't have to handcuff me. We can talk about this.
We will.
I don't know who you are, but I am not who you're looking for. This...
Anyone else?
It's a mistake.
Come on out.
Please. Please don't hurt me.
Anyone else here? Husband, boyfriend, girlfriend?
My husband. He's at work. He'll be here any second.
All right. Just us then. 8 years ago. Your father? A gun?
Father?
Ring any bells?
Why are you asking? Father?
Come on, skip this part.
Please. I'm sorry. Oh!
You're gonna give me his watch. Only question is how much you make me hurt you before you do.
I don't know about any watch.
Keep lying? See how creative I can get.
Help! Help!
Be honest with yourself. You knew this would happen. There's no cavalry coming. Nobody's gonna save you. If you want to live, tell me where the watch is. This is your very last chance.
It's in the vent in the bathroom. Under the medicine cabinet.
Good girl.
It's there. I gave you what you wanted. And I won't tell anyone. I swear. You find it?
I did.
Okay, now will you let me... What are you?
Easy now. Deep breath in.
No! No!
Pause. Okay, So obviously that's a great scene, and it's incredibly well acted. It's a perfect example of when the game has the dialogue line up correctly. It works. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. I mean, you watch from the closet as your pregnant wife is repeatedly kicked in the stomach, and after giving the assailant what he wants, she gets shot in the head. And the entire time that's happening, your wife is pleading for you to come and help her. And you are required to do this to progress the story. This is how you find out where the pocket watch is hidden. But let's continue the scene.
Are you... No. It'll restart. It has to restart. I can't do this. It's not really like losing you, all right? And the baby... Oh, fuck. It's gonna restart. I know it will. It has to.
Let's pause again. The main character leaves his hiding spot, and we see him desperately cling to the hope that the world is going to reset. That this isn't actually real, his wife isn't actually dead, he'll get to try again to save her. And in this moment, as the player, the game transfers that doubt onto us. What if this is the end? What if, in trying to figure out this puzzle, I sacrificed my wife to save myself? Did I just make a huge mistake? The game makes us doubt our actions and builds up an incredible amount of emotional tension with this scene, all contingent upon the act of walking through this door with the expectation and hope that we can still reset the timeline. Let's continue with the scene. And as a note, I skipped over the part where you check the wife's body because it's not relevant here. Alright, final pause. You were able to successfully reset the timeline, essentially bringing your wife back from the dead. You didn't make a mistake, it's okay now. As the player, I was overcome with relief, but I also started to have the feeling that I needed to be taking the situation a lot more seriously. Now, what would you expect the main character to say here? It's probably something along the lines of, oh, thank God it reset, okay, thank God, oh. A voice line that echoes the emotions the player is currently feeling, both enhancing them as well as immersing the player even deeper into the story. Now let's continue the scene and see what he actually says.
Oh, fuck me. Are you serious?
Oh, fuck me. Are you serious? Now, I think the problem here is pretty obvious, and it has nothing to do with the voice acting. I mean, he didn't go, oh, fuck me, are you serious? It was a well-delivered line. The problem is that emotionally, it does not fit. It's so ridiculously out of place that it completely pulled me out of the experience. I mean, are you serious? He wanted the timeline to reset. It makes no sense in context, and it ruins the moment that the game worked so hard to build up to. Now, I initially assumed that the problem here was that the game triggered a walked through the door reset line instead of whatever line was supposed to trigger. So I wanted to figure out what the line was supposed to be here. However, after watching more than 30 different content creators play through this part of the game, not a single one got a voice line that didn't ruin the moment. The best example of this ruining the moment is from a channel called DanQ8000, because he didn't realize you could reset the loop by going through the door. So after he leaves the closet, he shuts the door, and then wanders around the apartment for several minutes. At first, he expects the time loop to restart, and thinks he just has to wait, but as time continues ticking by without a reset, the doubt starts to creep in. He starts to wonder out loud, did I fuck up? Are you supposed to make sure she lives?
So did I fuck up? Is that what it's saying? Like you're supposed to make sure she lives?
And the thing he says that proves my point most clearly, I mean, I have to come out at some point, right?
I mean, I have to come out at some point.
Clearly, it was working on him, but when it resets, the main character says, wait, goddammit, and the moment's lost for him. If the main character had a contextually appropriate line here, I'm sure it would have emotionally resonated with Dan quite heavily, but the game fumbled it and he didn't care. Now, you might be thinking that I'm cherry picking here, that this is just a single instance, but it's not. This happens all over the place. The game constantly switches back and forth between heavy emotional context and casual gamey context. Most often, it happens in the context of the wife. She forgets that she's supposed to be angry all the time. For example, when you have to prove to the wife that you're in a time loop, you have to provide two examples, the stopwatch and the baby's clothes. If you try to use something else to prove to her that you're in a time loop, like the dessert, the light switch, the music, the thunder, it's wrong, and she'll shrug you off in a very casual way with a joke. Once you provide one of the two pieces of evidence, she gets more serious, like she's starting to believe you, but needs a little more proof. Her tone changes. Now, if you follow that with the second correct correct piece of evidence, it works great because the tone is consistent. But if you follow it with an incorrect choice, then she goes right back to the casual jokey response. The tone is completely out of place and it ruins the atmosphere of the moment. Here's my personal favorite example. In this one, you just explained the time loop to your wife and told her that a cop is coming to kill her and take the pocket watch as revenge for her killing her father. And she knows this. She says, "Is that him?" when he comes to the door. But then once he comes in, she's totally oblivious. Like she completely forgot what's going on and hits him with the, "What, me?"
Please, turn around, please, sir.
What? Me?
So I think I've illustrated how 12 Minutes suffers from gamified, emotionally inconsistent, poorly structured dialogue that robs it of the impact that the talented voice cast deliver, which brings me to the second problem, the gameplay. Now, when you really strip it down, 12 Minutes is just a point-and-click adventure game. You just have to solve some puzzles by clicking on the right thing at the right time. Now, how many puzzles does 12 Minutes have? If you're being strict with your counting, it's about 8, and if you're generous, it's like 15. And how long does it take to beat? Approximately 5 hours. This means, on average, it takes like 20 to 30 minutes to solve one of the puzzles. Let's compare this to The Secret of Monkey Island. In case you're not aware, The Secret of Monkey Island is a classic point-and-click adventure game. The classic point-and-click adventure game. It's widely loved, and it's a great comparison point for this kind of game. Now, The Secret of Monkey Island is a pretty complex game, with lots of things to do, dozens of puzzles to solve. I mean, just check out this ridiculous game solution graph I found online, and you can get a sense of the complexity here. I'll link a citation to the creator in the description. Now, how long does The Secret of Monkey Island take to beat? Approximately 6 hours. It's nearly the same as 12 minutes. The game. I'm not saying 6 hours is the same as like the duration, like 12 minutes, that you get it. Anyway, what this means is that we have a question to ask ourselves, which is, why do the puzzles in 12 minutes take so long? Now, the first and obvious thought is they're just hard, right? Like, they're really tough puzzles. They take a long time to figure out. Not really. At least not in the commonly understood sense of the word. They're not challenging. I mean, one of the puzzles is look at this picture at the right time. Another puzzle is look at the stopwatch at the right time. One of the puzzle solutions is just arbitrarily flipping a light switch. And that's the problem. The puzzle solutions are arbitrary and simple, and they're also specific. You don't need to just look at the picture, you need to look at the picture exactly when the game wants you to. Now, this is pretty classic point-and-click design. So what's the problem, other than being maybe a little outdated? The problem is that this game is a time loop. In a classic point-and-click adventure, when you want to try a different solution, you try it immediately. It takes seconds. So once you've figured out what you need to do, it doesn't take very long to understand what the game wants you to do. However, in 12 minutes, when you want to try a slightly different solution, it takes several minutes of playing through the same events that you've already seen over and over and over again. It's some of the most repetitive gameplay I've ever experienced. And it's not particularly satisfying. Most of the time, it's not even clear what the game wants you to do. Like the quote-unquote puzzle that's, after you obtain enough information, stare at the pocket watch. Why? There's nothing in the game that indicates that you should do that. There are several points where the game basically just becomes, after enough random fucking around, you'll, by chance, happen to do the right thing that lets you move forward. And that's just not a good puzzle. The other problem I have with the puzzle design is that the game doesn't want to take advantage of being a time loop. The interesting part of a time loop game is the fact that through multiple iterations, you learn exactly what's going to happen, right? You learn what the characters will do on their own, as well as what they'll do if acted upon, and you can use that information to create plans that will allow you to progress further. The clip I showed earlier is actually a great example of the result of this kind of planning. When you first get home, your wife is in the bathroom, and when she comes out and sees you, she says, "Hey there, I didn't hear you come in." This lets you come up with a plan of hiding as soon as you get home, before she has a chance to notice you. And when you execute this plan, it results in the scene we watched before, where you learn where the pocket watch is hidden. In future loops, now that you know where the pocket watch is located, you can retrieve it. This is an effective introduction to the gameplay concept of planning around characters' actions according to the time loop. But it's the only instance where the game actually takes advantage of being in a time loop. They never expand on it. I mean, hell, one of the puzzles requires you to drug your wife with sleeping pills, but the sleeping pills take effect instantly, and she accepts the water whenever you offer it to her. What? This is a time loop game, man. Why not make her grab a glass of lemonade or something from the fridge at a specific time, requiring you to sneak the sleeping pills into the lemonade before that happens? And hell, you can make it so she'll notice if you're drugging the lemonade unless she's not in the room. Then you have her go into the bedroom at a specific time before she gets her drink to, I don't know, grab the book that she reads on the couch. This would force the player to take advantage of the knowledge they gained about character actions through the time loop to solve the puzzle. The fact that you actually just go into the bathroom, drug the water, give it to her whenever you want, and she immediately immediately falls asleep in a time loop game, a game about timing, is ridiculous. It's inexcusable. And also, electrocuting the cop with the light switch is almost a time loop puzzle, but it's just not interesting. You don't need to learn anything specific about the cop's behavior to get him to walk into the trap, and you also don't need to learn anything specific about the light switch other than that it's broken and you have to click it once. And it's like this for every puzzle in the game. They all flirt with being an interesting time loop puzzle, but none of them ever commit to it. But okay, this was specifically talking about making plans using the knowledge of character actions. What about simply information gathering, where you use the time loop to learn things that you shouldn't know? That happens in the game, but the problem is that it never felt like I was actually earning the knowledge. Most of the time, the information gathering feels like, solve arbitrary puzzle in extremely specific way. Now the characters will tell you the next piece of information you need to move the plot forward. But the best way to talk about this is to move to my third and final point, which is that the story has no purpose. I think the easiest way to talk about the story is to break it down into the 4 major reveals. We're about to go into Omega Super Spicy Spoiler Land, so this is your final chance to abandon ship before I actually ruin the entire game for you. Okay? Okay. The 4 major reveals. 1. Your wife killed her father. 2. Actually, your wife didn't kill her father. 3. Your wife's brother killed her father. And 4. The big one that everyone memes about. You're your wife's brother. Now, I segued into this part by saying that you don't actually earn this information, and when you look at these 4 reveals, you can see what I mean. You, as the player, don't really figure this stuff out. It's just told to you. Your wife reveals that she killed her dad once you find the watch. The other 3 reveals pretend like you figure it out yourself, but it really just splits the information into 2 pieces and gives 1 piece to the wife and 1 piece to the cop. This works for the second reveal. I'll defend the second reveal. Your wife gives you the details of her father's murder, according to her, and then the cop gives you the details of his murder, according to him. And using the differences in the 2 stories, as well as the picture, you can figure out how to prove your wife's innocence. This is excellent, and I wish it's the way the rest of the game worked. You're actually accruing information through different time loops where different characters tell you different things, and using other evidence you find yourself to figure it out. It's awesome and a great introduction to this kind of gameplay, but again, it doesn't expand on it. That's the only good example. For the third reveal, during the recounting of the murder, he mentions that the father referred to the murderer as a monster. This is useless information that the player can't do anything with, because of course you'd refer to your murderer as a monster. There's nothing the player can do with this information to investigate any further. But then, once you've solved the puzzle of call the cop's daughter at the right time and choose the right conversation option, your wife reveals that she has a half-brother that her father always referred to as a monster. You go from basically no information to having the entire reveal. It's not satisfying. It doesn't feel like I earned it. I didn't take advantage of a time loop to figure that out. My wife just fucking told me. And it's even worse for the final reveal, where the information you get from your wife is that her father had an affair with his nanny. And the information you get from the cop is the nanny's name is the same as your mother's name. And once the main character gets that information, you don't even have time to think about the implications of it before the game just outright tells you and confirms that, yeah, actually you're the brother and you killed your dad, but you forgot you did that, and then you married and impregnated your sister. And let me tell you, that goes way beyond not satisfying. It's the most contrived, nonsense storyline that I could possibly think of. It feels like the story was just going for the absolute most shock value possible and overshot it by a lot. They wanted a what and instead landed at what? Now, I think that this twist could have worked, but I would need to be fully emotionally engaged and I would need to earn it. If I was fully immersed and I pieced it together myself with the crumbs of information I received from completing interesting puzzles that took advantage of the time loop, then I think it would work as a twist. But as it stands, after I completed a frustrating, arbitrary sequence of steps exactly the way the game wanted me to, they went,
"Oh, I know we didn't tell you this or give you any clues at all, but you were the brother the whole time. Wow!" Ooh.
And it just didn't work for me. Now, I think it's important when examining any form of media and a story like this to ask, what was the point? What was the message this was trying to send? And for a long time, the best answer I could come up with was, don't fuck your sister. Oh, no matter how bad you want to. And I think the reason I struggled to come up with an overarching theme is because the game doesn't do a good enough job actually conveying their message. They more or less cram it all in at the end, and because they wanted a vague, mysterious ending, they don't give concrete answers to questions that I feel needed them. Now, it's just my interpretation, but it's pretty clear to me that the events of this game all happen in the main character's head. He was confronted by his father about his feelings for his sister, and rather than facing the reality of the situation where he needs to let go of those feelings, he instead escapes to the fantasy in his mind where they can be together. But even those fantasies eventually come to an end, and he has to face reality. So, my most generous interpretation of the theme is that you can't escape into fantasies to solve your real-world problems. However, I'm not entirely sure if that's a fair assessment. I mean, it really only feels like the message of the third and final super secret ending, and it runs completely antithetical to the message of the previous ending, as well as that one important line that gets repeated over and over again from the book about forgetting your problems to live in the moment. And neither of these two ideas are actually reinforced by the gameplay or by any of the other reveals. Not to mention the fact that even if my theory is correct, it's like, who cares? The theme is, sometimes you have to face your problems, or sometimes fantasizing too much is bad. Like, okay? See, as I alluded to, the game spends no time developing these ideas, and as a result, doesn't really say anything interesting about them. If the game had started to clue us in earlier about the idea that we're currently living in a fantasy, then we might have more to think about here. The game could have asked us hard questions about how we reject reality and cling to fantasies even as they crumble around us. But for the sake of vagueness, mystery, and plain old shock value, they did not do that. And man, that's assuming I'm even correct about what they were trying to say, because what with little information they did actually give us, how could you know? So, those are my 3 major problems with 12 minutes. I could discuss some of the smaller issues, like how the game subtly encourages you to try to kill the cop, which caused most of the players I watched to waste at least the first hour accomplishing nothing, or how the dialogue choices and writing are super weird and it never feels like you can actually get the main character to say the thing you actually want them to say, not to mention all the technical problems. But I think those aren't really worth too much discussion compared to what I think are the core problems with the game. And it's sad, because despite all the flaws, I think 12 minutes has something really brilliant in there. The concept has so much potential. I've always loved time loop games. I mean, Majora's Mask is my favorite game of all time. I was so excited for this. And the problems that I've outlined here are solvable. And I think if they were solved, we'd have one of the best games I've seen in a while on our hands. And I want to see more games out there taking a risk like this, trying to tell an interesting story in a unique way, like 12 minutes was able to do. Despite all of its problems, I still respect 12 minutes for what it is and what it tried to be. I just hope that the next time something like this comes along, it'll be able to fully deliver on its premise. Well, if you made it this far, I'd guess that you probably liked the video, so if you could represent that like for the video by actually pressing the like button, I'd greatly appreciate it. It means a lot to me because I'm still a small channel, and I'm so close to 1,000 subscribers, and I'm really excited for hitting that big milestone. So yeah, thanks for watching all the way. Let me know what you thought of 12 minutes in the comments. I'd love to discuss it with you because, I mean, I have a lot of opinions about it, but I know that this game is going to be very contentious because some people will hate it and some people will love it, and there's going to be a lot of people in the middle. Personally, I think it's okay. But yeah, thanks for watching. Appreciate you. Bye!